Hello everyone, this is VGTI, and the next game I'm covering is Gone Home. The reason I'm covering it is because I found an interesting theory that has actually been out there for a while about a certain character in the game. This theory originated on the Clockwork World's blog post. So if you want to check it out there, just search it. I would Google Gone Home Oscar Masan, or however you say his last name. But the theory revolves around Oscar himself, which is a character in the game that we see multiple times in newspaper articles and letters and testaments, things like that. We see a picture of him as well at different points in the game. But that's beside the point. This theory focuses on him as well as two other characters, Terrence Greenbrier and Richard Greenbrier. Terrence Greenbrier is the father of the protagonist of Gone Home, and Richard Greenbrier is the father of Terrence. They are both involved in this as well, although Richard less so, but you'll get my point in a moment. The theory, it has a lot of evidence to support it. There's a lot that you can find in the game that points towards this being true, and I think it's outright confirmed by this point, but I thought it would be worth discussing and telling you guys about if you didn't know about it, and maybe adding my own thoughts onto it as well, involving Oscar. So let's delve right in. To lay the groundwork for this whole theory, I'm going to start with Oscar himself, and the evidence that we find relating to him. I think the most obvious would be the safe in the basement. It's a secret safe, and the reason why it's secret is because, to get to the ending of the game, you don't have to open this safe. It's an optional thing, and you may even forget about it by the time you beat the game. But if you go around the house hunting for clues, you will find out the combination to the safe, which is important to this theory. The combination to the safe is 1963, and this is a very important year. When you open the safe, you find all sorts of things in it. You find different chemicals as well as morphine, syrettes, and a letter written to Oscar's sister. This letter is important as Oscar reveals in it that he has transgressions and that he's trying to obtain forgiveness from his kin, and that he sold his business to stay away from temptations. And we have to wonder what these temptations are and why he would sell his business because of them. His business was a pharmacy, so it's a little suspicious. But then it gets even more suspicious when you look across from the safe and see height markings on the wall. These height markings are for Terrence, which, as I mentioned, is Oscar's nephew and the father of the protagonist of Gone Home. These height markings go up to when Terrence was at age 12 and stop there. This height marking for when he was age 12 was from Thanksgiving of 1963, which is also the combination to the safe. Now the height markings stop here. This might not seem suspicious at first, but then you have to realize that the year 1963 is actually pretty important, and we see it a lot. Seeing these height markings also begs the question as to why they stopped at that specific year and didn't go any further than that. We then move on to Terrence himself, and the big important thing about Terrence is the book series that he is writing involving the JFK assassination. Now, if you don't know what the date of the JFK assassination is, it was November 22nd, 1963, which was very soon before Thanksgiving of that same year, which is where the height markings stop on the wall, downstairs, across from the safe. So you can obviously make the connections here with that year, 1963. But then we look at the plot of Terrence's books, which involve a hero going back in time and stopping the JFK assassination. This is when Terrence's father, Richard, enters the picture. There's even more evidence that we find down in the basement, the very same area where we find the safe with the combination in 1963. If you go out into the area outside of that room, you'll find one of Terrence's books with a note taped on the back from Richard himself, congratulating him on going through the publication process and getting his book published, but also criticizing the use of cliched tropes in his book. The one thing he congratulated Terrence on was projecting his personal problems into the fiction. Now, that makes you wonder. Terrence is projecting his personal problems into this book? This book is about a time traveler stopping the JFK assassination. How could that relate to personal problems for Terrence? Well, let's think here. Oscar did something that was unforgivable. It made his entire family hate him. And whatever he did, it most likely happened in the year 1963. And Terrence is clearly connected to whatever Oscar did because of not only the height chart, but the fact that Terrence supposedly is projecting his personal problems into this book, which involves a time traveler going back to 1963, the year that we are assuming that Oscar did whatever he did. The theory is that Oscar abused Terrence, and that he most likely had thoughts of abusing other kids as well, since he sold soda to them at his pharmacy, which is the place that he said he was getting his temptations. It's pretty dark, but it makes a lot of sense, because Terrence's books are about going back to 1963 and stopping a tragedy from happening, which, as Richard said, these are his personal issues showing. So, I think that Oscar abused Terrence in 1963, Thanksgiving, and that Terrence was pretty scarred by it, and this is showing in his books. There's even more going on with Terrence as well, as in relation to his father, because you find a picture in the basement, the very same area where you find that book with Richard's note taped on the back. You find a picture of Richard, and the area where his face should be is cut out of the picture. We have to wonder why that is, but we can assume that Terrence did that. We find on the note on that book that Richard said, "You can do better." He wasn't impressed with his book overall, and Terrence really wants Richard's approval. He wants his father's approval of his own work, but all he keeps getting is, "You can do better." We find a post-it note above Terrence's desk over in his study that says, "You can do better," and surrounding it is a bunch of plot notes for his book. He was obsessed with trying to make his father appreciate his work and actually say that he did a good job, rather than say, "You can do better." That's basically the whole theory relating to Terrence and what happened to him and what Oscar did. However, I do have a bit more to add on to it, my own theory that involves Oscar himself. We find a letter that Sam had written to a kid in her class who ended up calling her house the Psycho House. It's kind of unsettling, but that's not the only instance that we have in the game of people hinting that Oscar's ghost is haunting the house. We find a log of experiments that Sam and her girlfriend were doing to see if they could see Oscar's ghost or make him appear, and they reported seeing and hearing multiple strange things around the house. And then we have the game itself. As you're exploring the house, you'll sometimes hear footsteps in the distance or weird ticking sounds like someone's turning the lights on and off. There's even an instance of the lights going on and off at one point in the game, although this could be attributed to just faulty lighting. But either way, it's pretty suspicious when you think about it. After all of this evidence that points to Oscar's ghost haunting the house, we even find a secret area where Sam and her girlfriend had a Ouija board set up, and they were trying to summon his ghost. I mean, there's too much evidence here that's pointing towards people seeing things and hearing things, and you yourself see and hear things as you play the game, although it's more hearing things than seeing things. I think that Oscar's ghost is indeed haunting the house, and the reason why I think this is because Oscar lived a lonely, sad life where no one forgave him for what he did to Terrence, and because of that, he died unhappy and unfulfilled. And I think that because of this, his spirit lingered on in the house, and it is indeed haunting it. The things you hear are his ghost, and the things that Sam reported seeing and hearing did in fact happen because of his ghost. It may seem far-fetched, but it's not too much of a stretch to say that Oscar was pretty unhappy with his life. Considering everything that happened to him, I think that his spirit lingered on because of all of this. So that's the theory regarding Oscar Masan from Gone Home. What did you guys think of the theory? Leave your thoughts in the comments and feel free to speculate with me if you want. Like the video, subscribe to my channel if you want to see even more video game theory videos down the line, and look forward to my next video.